is, of course, whoops, there we go. Hi, okay, I think I did that. Yeah, okay. So good morning, not good morning, sorry. Hi, everybody. This week's Parsha is, of course, Lech Lecha. And it's very, these Parshiot are like, it's so exciting always to get back to these Parshiot because, of course, we talk about the Avos and the Imaos all year round. But, you know, when we get to the Parshiot that are like specifically talking about them, so we get to really, you know, delve in deeper and connect every year on a different level, on a deeper level, from a different angle. I just want to make sure that you guys can all unmute yourselves if you would like to. Okay, so just someone check that out.
My philosophy is that the reason Cheshvan doesn't have any holidays is because there's so much juicy Torah. There's so much amazing stuff that just comes up, like the whole introduction of each one of these mothers and fathers, like, and the beginning of the story, like we don't have to worry about getting anything else done for any holiday. We could just concentrate on Torah.
Absolutely, absolutely. The strength and the depth of Cheshvan is in a totally different way from the Chagim that we had in Tishrei. Thank you, Matester. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to share the source sheet, and then we will jump in. I think this is it. Yeah. Okay, great. So I made it nice and big, Esty. So, okay, so we're starting out from the beginning of the Parsha, and Hashem basically starts out by saying, Vayomer Hashem el Avram, Lech Lecha me'artzecha mimoladetcha u'mibeis avicha el ha'aretz asher erecha, right? Ereka. The Lord, Hashem said to Avram, go forth from your native land and from your father's house to the land that I will show you. And surprise, surprise, we're actually not talking about that pasuk today. Despite most shiurim, I think, in this parsha are about Lech Lecha. There's so much to be said about that pasuk. We're actually going to go right on to the next one. Ve'escha legoy gadol ve'avarcha ve'agadla shmecha v'hei bracha. And I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. So, what does Rashi say about that? He says, he jumps right away, and he says, he brings out from the Midrash. He says that this idea about making you a blessing, right? There's a whole discussion in the Gemara, and it says V'ascha legoy gadol zeh she'omrim Elokei Avraham. Okay, so we're going to focus on the idea that in the Shmona Esrei, right, Namida, I'm going to sit right here, right, the whole first. Really the first three brachot, but the beginning of the Shmona Esrei is focused on the Avos, and it says Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov, right? But then at the very end, the bracha that we actually make, right? Melech Ozer Moshiach Magen, Baruch Atah Hashem Magen Avraham. So there's a discussion in the Gemara about that in particular. Okay, so he says, so Rashi points out, and he says, "Ve'ascha legoy gadol." So this is from the pasuk up here. Zeh she'omrim Elokei Avraham, ve'arechecha zeh she'omrim Elokei Yitzchak. Right, that little piece, that word in the pasuk is referring to Elokei Yitzchak. V'zeh she'omrim Ve'agadla shmecha zeh she'omrim Elokei Yaakov. And where it says, and I will make your name great, it's actually reference to Yaakov. Okay, so I will make you a great nation is a reference to Abraham. I will bless you is a reference to Yitzchak. And I will make you sorry, I'm like, people are getting kicked out and coming back in. It's distracting. Sorry. Okay. V'gadla shmecha, and I will make your name great. Zeh shomri, that's a reference to Yaakov. Yechol yihiyu chotmim bekulan. Now, why don't we say in the bracha, Melech Ozer Moshiach Magen, Baruch Atah Hashem, Magen Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, or something that includes all of their names? Why do we end with just Magen Avraham? Talmud Lamar v'heye bracha b'cha chotmim v'lo bahem. That the main thing is that I'm going to make you, like, you shall be a blessing. And when it says you shall be a blessing, it's specifically a reference to Abraham. So even though really they're all referenced in this pasuk, we're going to finish chotmin, meaning the signature, the sign off, is with just Abraham Avinu. So the Kedushas Levi has a beautiful idea. And actually, we're going to really be talking about that bracha all night and what it means. But I'm going to jump right into the Kedushas Levi so that you guys have like an idea of where we're going tonight. Ki hine yesh shlosha midot asher habore baruch hu mitnaheg bahem kol haolamos. Right? There are three midos. There are three character traits, personality traits that Hashem Kilu runs the world with. Okay, Vehem midas ava, midas hagvura, midas hatiferes. Right, and these are very, very well known. The character trait of ahava or chesed, right, loving kindness, umidas hagvura, right, strength, or we'll call tonight also boundaries, umidat hatiferet, and tiferet is keilu, really like a combination of both of those, and a beautiful word for that is harmony. Okay, so chesed or loving kindness, strength or boundaries, and the harmony between them. Vehine midas hagvura afa pi shehu nir'a shehu lehefech midas ahava. Right now, sometimes gevura, when we talk about gevura, right, because we also use the words ahava and gira, right? We also use the words love and awe. So sometimes it feels like gevura or boundaries or strength or fear or awe, even though it looks like it's the opposite of love or chesed, loving kindness, ki chas v'chalila lifamim hu oseh din ba'olam, because in the way that we see things, in our limited view, it looks to us like gevura is like judgment. That gevura is like this, strength with which things that don't look so good, they don't look so lovey-dovey to us, okay, happen in the world. And we know that that is the midah through which those kinds of things come into the world. Afal pichen tachlita hu ahava. But anyway, nevertheless, even though we call it gevura, even though we understand that that this comes from a level of strength and putting in boundaries, the tachlis, even of gevura, is ahava. Kamosha amru chavrei Eov, right? Eov's friends said to him, le'Eov, v'haya roshetcha mitza'ar v'acharitcha isageh ma'od. That the beginning starts out with like smallness, tsa'ar, okay, like being I don't know, diminished, or from like a negative, like a difficulty. And the end is with you will grow very great. Okay, so this is the idea of gevura, that it looks to us like it's almost like a punishment. Okay, but really it's coming out of ahava. We know that it's all rooted in ahava, the same way that Avraham is the father and Yitzchak is the son, right? And Yaakov is the grandson. So everything comes from Avraham. And he goes on and he says, Ki ikar midas hagvura la'asot lif'amim chas v'chalila din ba'olam. Because the flavor, or really the essence, okay, of the midah of gevura, the midah of boundaries, is to that it looks to us like judgment in the world. Kadei she'achar kach yushpa kol tov And the reason is because afterwards it's going to affect goodness. Okay, it's going to be like an influencer of goodness. So Ke'ilu, for example, somebody, goes into labor, right? And labor with a baby looks like if an alien, landed, or let's say a husband, landed. And he would see, labor going on. So it looks terrible, looks painful, looks horrible, looks like judgment. And yet, what comes out from it is Bezrat Hashem, a beautiful, healthy baby. And so we see that even though the beginning is tsar, right? But afterwards, there's this great growth, okay, of not just, a whole new neshama coming into the world, but all of the love that then gets, directed at that baby, and all of the love that baby then, brings into the world. So to our eyes, it doesn't always look, we can't always see from the beginning the good. And he brings up a perfect example for this week's parsha. He says, "Kmo shenachum ish gamzu amar al kol mikra asher hakra lo gamzu l'tova." Right? Nachum ish gamzu is called Nachum ish gamzu because everything that happened to him, on everything that he saw, he said gamzu l'tova. This is also for the good. Now, what's funny about this, or what's interesting about this, that the Kedushas Levi brings it in, I'm sure it's not coincidence, I'm sure the Kedushas Levi knew this, right? But that the Medrash of, actually it's a story in the Gemara, that of Nachum ish Gamzu is actually about, or has a connection to this week's Parsha. Okay, so what am I talking about? So the story goes that Nachum was Reb Nachum, Nachum ish Gamzu, Rabbi Nachum, was a rabbi in here in Eretz Yisrael, and he was once sent to Rome to try to persuade the Roman emperor to basically rescind a decree that was supposed to be put into effect against the Jews, and the Jewish community here sent him with like this whole treasure chest full of gems and gold and all kinds of things that would be appealing to the emperor of Rome. And on the way, Nachum ish Gamzu stayed at an inn, and overnight, these thieves, of course, saw him, thought that he was an easy target, and opened the chest, saw all the gold and the gems, stole it all, and replaced it all with sand. And Nachum ish Gamzu did not know this. He didn't see it. He didn't open the box to see, and he continued on his journey, to Rome. And actually, it was the innkeeper. Sorry, I have it written down so I wouldn't forget anything else, but it was the innkeeper that actually did it. But anyway, he comes to the emperor, and he is granted an audience because he's a representative of the people of Eretz Yisrael. And he hands the box to the emperor. And what do you think happens? The emperor opens the box. He sees a bunch of sand and dirt there, and he's like, is this guy a total idiot? Why is he bringing me sand and dirt? He's a rebel. Throw him in jail. It was very, very insulting to the emperor of Rome to be given a box of dirt, essentially. And what did Reb Nachum say? He said, Gamzu l'tova, right? They threw him in jail. He's sitting in jail, and he says, Gamzu l'tova. Now, he doesn't know what actually is good about this, but nevertheless, he said everything that Hashem does is for the best. And so this too, I know eventually will be for the best. And so what happens? The Gemara goes on that there's a trial, and Eliyahu Navi appears at the trial, disguised as one of the emperor's advisors. And he says, the Jews aren't stupid. They wouldn't have sent someone stupid. They wouldn't do this, this is not like them to just rebel openly like this. There's a story about about Abraham, their forefather, that went to war against Hadar LaOmer, right? And the 4 kings, okay? So, which is in this week's Parsha, the 5 kings versus the 4 kings, really was Abraham versus the 4 kings. So, and what did he do? The Medrash tells us that he threw sand and dirt at Hadar LaOmer's army, and the sand and dirt turned into arrows and deadly weapons. And in this way, Abraham won this big battle against a much, much bigger army. And so he said, maybe this sand and soil, this is a tradition among their people that this can happen. Maybe this is that sand and soil. So let's try it. So the emperor had been at war, for a while, and he was not defeating his enemies. So he sent the sand off, it got thrown, and lo and behold, a miracle happened, and Hashem did turn it into arrows. And Nachum was, of course, freed from prison, and he was given lots of gifts, and the thing that he wanted to ask the emperor was granted, and it all worked out for the best, right? Famous story. And I just thought it was Hashgacha Pratis, obviously, and on the Kedushas Levi for bringing it in, and it Davka happened in this week's parsha. So he says, right, that just like Nachum Ish Gamzu had no idea how it was going to work out, but he knew that it was going to work out. Afal pi shehakara lo eze mikra asher b'tchila nir'a lo tova. Right? It happened to him something that didn't look good from the beginning. Afal pi chen sofa hi tova. But nevertheless, the end was good. Ve'asher b'tchila nir'a lo tova. Hirak kadei sheyihiyeh achar kach tova. And if it doesn't look good in the beginning, it's only so that afterwards it can look good. Now, what do we mean by this? The same way that, when you go into a, let's say it's been, raining nonstop for 10 days, and all of a sudden the sun comes out. So you have a much, it's still, Joni, is it raining by you guys still? It stopped? Okay. So I know my mom was saying that it was raining for days and days on end, and it
stopped, but we were supposed to have a Noach program at the shul. They
got rained out
because of a mabul.
Boy, perfect timing. So we.
I'm in New York.
What?
I'm in New York. It was raining.
Oh, you're in New York.
And it was raining here too for Parshas Noach.
It's good. It's good to see. It's good to see. So, but if it is raining for a number of days and then the sun comes out, you have a much greater appreciation for the sun. Or, if it's very dark in a room and you turn on a light so you can see the light. When the sunlight is shining so bright and you go outside and you light a little flashlight, you can't appreciate it. You can't see it at all. So the way that Hashem created the world is that we need some darkness in order to see the light, in order to appreciate the light. V'lefi dvarenu ele afilu midas hagvura tchilata hi ahava. And therefore, according to what we're saying, even the midah of gvura that looks, harsh in some ways, it begins with ahava. Its shoresh is in ahava. Its shoresh is in goodness and kindness. V'hine yidua she'Avraham romez al midat ahava, that Avraham is connected to the midah of ahava. Yitzchak is connected to the midah of gvura. V'Yaakov al midas hatiferes. V'zehu she'amar yechol chotmin b'chulan. And the Gemara says that the bracha in Shmona Esrei could have ended with all of their names. Klomar, sheyehe midas hagvura v'hatiferes tachlis gam ken gvura lazeh amar b'cha chotmin. But the right Tiferes also has in it this like aspect of gvura, and therefore and we saw that Hashem wants all of them in this world. We need all of them in this world. So the bracha could have ended with all of their names, with Avraham, the same way that it starts, Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov. It could have ended that way, but no, it says that we're going to end only in Avraham's name. Kolomar tachlis tiferes v'hagvura hu rak sheyit orer midas ahava. But what's the tachlis of the gvura aspect of gvura and tiferet? It's just so that it arouses or it awakens the midah of ahava. Now that's in Hashem, and it's also in us. When we feel that there's gvura sort of pressing down on us, we turn to Hashem and we ask Him for to show us kindness, loving kindness, to show us ahava, and so that draws more of Hashem into this world and into our hearts. So it always goes back to ahava. So even though they look on the surface like they have this aspect of gevura, it's also rooted in ahava, because that was the first midah. That was the first, Avraham. Ki chotem hu tachlis hadavar. And the chotem is the tachlis hadavar. So what do they mean by that is that when it says Magen Avraham, the way that the bracha ends with Magen Avraham, the siddur essentially, or the Anshe Knesset Agdola and the rabbis who made the siddur, they are basically saying to us, when we say Magen Avraham, it includes everything. It includes Yitzchak and it includes Yaakov, because they are also in Ahava. They're also in Chesed. They're also, even though to us it looks maybe not so clearly as Chesed, we have to remind ourselves that it is Chesed. It is Ahava. And so every day when we say the Shmona Esrei, and we say that bracha Magen Avraham, it can be a reminder to us that it's all that the chotem is Avraham, because that's the tachlis hadavar. That's the essence of the thing, is that everything is based in Ahava. But we're going to go a little bit further. Actually, there's one more story that I want to tell you. This is like a famous, I don't know, Chinese story or something like that, but I've heard it a million shirim, and I think it's just such a great line that I think that I want to just share it with you. The story about like a farmer that bought a new horse, right? And everyone's like, oh, that's so amazing. And he's like, maybe yes, maybe no. And the horse runs away. And people are like, oh, that's so bad. It's so terrible for you. And he's like, maybe yes, maybe no. And then the horse comes back and he brings, friends with him. A bunch of wild horses follow this horse back. And the neighbors are like, oh, wow, it's so amazing. Now you have all these horses. And he's like, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, maybe yes, maybe no. And the son of the farmer goes to break in one of the horses. He falls off the horse. He breaks his leg. And what does everybody say? Oh, too terrible. That's so bad. His son broke his leg because of the horse. And the farmer says, maybe yes, maybe no. Maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. What happens next? The emperor needs soldiers for his army. The recruiting officers, come around to chop anyone who's the right age to be in the emperor's army, to be a soldier. And the son has a broken leg, so he doesn't get taken to be in the emperor's army. And the neighbors are all like, wow, the whole thing was so that the son couldn't be it, right? And the farmer's like, maybe yes, maybe no. And the whole idea is that this story keeps on going, right? This is the story of our lives. The best line I ever heard is that if it doesn't look good, then you're not at the end yet, right? So none of us are at the end. Bezrat Hashem, Ad Mea Vesrim, then we'll look back and we'll say, oh, I had to get that cold that day, and I had to get that flat tire that day, and I had to, in order to blah, 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 blah. And Bezrat Hashem, we should all, we say, Ulshon, Az Yomer Bagoyim, Schok Pinu, right? That it's going to be like a laughter is going to burst from our mouths. I love this idea that when I think it's also from the Kedushas Levi, that when we finally see Mashiach, we're going to go like, now I understand. Now I understand everything that I had to go through. That it's not even going to be like it's going to be schok pinu. We're going to laugh from it, because we're going to look back and we're going to say, wow, every single thing that happened was exactly what I needed to get me to this point, was exactly what the world needed, to get us to this point. I think, we all feel like we're in the middle of we are all in the middle of, a major world event right now. We don't feel like that every day of every year, but, right now it really feels like that. And Bezrat Hashem, we'll all be laughing about it sometime soon. Okay, I want to bring in another part, okay, because there's a beautiful idea from the Sfas Emes, but we're going to read the psukim first so that we can understand it. It's later on in the chapter, okay, and later on in the parsha, when Avraham, he has this whole thing that he goes and he's in the middle of all these tests, and he has this whole battle with the 4 kings and the 5 kings that we were just talking about, and he and after he wins that battle, this is the pasuk where it says achar hadvarim ha'ela. It's describing that, right after he beat Chadar LaOmer and the 4 kings, the 3 kings that were with Chadar LaOmer. It says achar hadvarim ha'ela. Sometime later, hayad dvar Hashem el Avram. A vision of Hashem came to Avram. B'machazeh, a vision, sorry. The word of Hashem came to Avram in a vision. Lemor, al tira Avram, anochi magen lach shekarcha harbe meod. he said, and this vision or the words of Hashem said to him, fear not, Avram, I am a shield to you. So Magen Avraham, okay, so it comes up in all three pieces. I'm a shield to you, your reward shall be very great. Now, Rashi says, Achar dvarim ha'ele, achar shena'asa lo nes zeh. So this nes that he beat the four kings, sheharag et ha'malachim v'haya doeg ve'omer, but he was worried because it was very un-Avraham-like to be in this battle with the kings, right? What's Abraham's midah? We just talked all about it. Chesed, loving kindness, right? We all talk about Abraham's open tent. What's he known for? He's known for making souls, he introducing people to Hashem, having them bench, after the meal, inviting them in first for a meal, this whole idea of hachnas orchim. So many of these things, reflect this beautiful aspect of chesed and loving kindness. And now all of a sudden he's in a war, and he Keilu almost single-handedly beat this, very, very massive army, and it was very violent. It wasn't like the rest of his life was. So he says that he was worried. Ve'omer shema kibalti sachar al kol tzidkotai, that the reward that Hashem had intended to give me, or what he was giving me, was sort of dependent on my tzidkis, on my righteousness. Lekach amar lo hamakom, and therefore Hashem said to him, Al tira Avram, anochi magen lach. Don't worry, I am a shield to you. Min ha'onesh shelo ta'anesh al kol otan nefashot shaharagta. That you're not gonna be punished. This is not, it's not. You did the right thing, even though you feel like, whoa, who was that engaged in that battle? Where did that come from? And now is all my schar going to be taken away from me, because it's like keneged everything that I've tried to do my whole life. And Hashem's coming to him and he's saying, no, you're not going to be punished. Not only that, but I'm going to be with you like a shield. And the Sfas Emes has this amazing insight into what these words mean. He says, Ki hine Avram Avinu alav shalom haya shoresh hachesed, right? The same thing that we just saw and we see from countless other Svarim Kedoshim, that Avram Avinu is the shoresh of chesed, right? He's rooted in this loving kindness. Shechesed mitgalgel ba'olam bishvilo, that this midah of chesed was drawn down into the world, into people, like as a character trait through Avraham Avinu, right? That's why we needed Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov to have these different character traits, because that's our spiritual DNA, right? And we talk about this every year, how, Ma'aseh Avos Siman L'Banim is not just like that the deeds of the Avos, of the Avos and the Imaos, the fathers and the mothers, is a sign for us, but it's not just a sign, it's our spiritual DNA. When we learn the stories, this is why it's so important to learn these every year, because every year we're ki'ilu learning about our Zaidi, our bubbies. So I learn more about myself because every single one of us has a little piece of Avram Avinu in us. So our character traits that we are working so hard to improve all the time, they are based in the character traits that our Avos and Imaos brought into the world. So the Sfas Emes says, Kamoshakatu Bamidrash, we're not going to go into that, okay? We're going to go right into the next line. Ubekan har'a gvura gdola. But here we see such huge gvura. This was massive gvura, massive strength, massive, not chesed, ki'ilu, okay? Seemingly not chesed. V'hika kol ela hamalachim. And he hit. It's like when you see your child who's so sweet, when you're in the room and all of a sudden, when they think you're not looking and they like smack the other, their sibling, and you're like, what? Where did that come from? Cute little shmulek. How did I won't use any of my children because they never do such things like that. But, where did that come from? You seemed so, in such a good mood, first of all, but also like, full of chesed, and like all of a sudden this massive stroke of gvura comes out. לכן נתיירא פן ירד ממדרגתו, להיות נעשה על ידו דין כזה. That he was afraid that he was going to fall from his level, that such an event that held so much deen happened through his hands, right? How was he such a part of something that looks so gevuradik, so much rooted in strength and judgment and not in ahava and chesed? Achen be'emet ze atzmo haya birur midato. But actually, this fight that he had to engage in with these kings was a birur, was a refinement of the midah of chesed. Ki ha-chesed ve'ahava tzarich shmira, because chesed, loving kindness and love, needs a guarding. We need to watch over it. Shelo yitpashet yoter midai, that it doesn't spread too much, right? So, for example, just as a very, very I don't know, it's a very strange example, but the Torah and the Gemara go into this whole discussion how inappropriate relationships, like a brother and a sister, right, arayos, is called chesed. How could such a thing be called chesed? But there's always a positive way of using a midah and a negative way of using a midah. And the negative way of using chesed is like to break through all the boundaries, to overflow the boundaries. We talk about like the Mabul, actually, right? That it turned from a gentle rain into this like explosive flooding and destruction. That it could have been Gishmei Bracha, but instead it turned into the waters of destruction. And everything is like that, right? All chesed, all love is coming from a wonderful place. But if it shoots forth with no shape to it, with no measurement, with no deen, then it can overflow and be destructive. So he says, he quotes his grandfather, the Chiddushei Arim, right? Kmo shekatuv Moriz Keni Zichrono Livracha, on a Perush on the pasuk, and I have it down for you over here. It's from Shir HaShirim. Ma yafu pa'amayich bena'alim bat nadiv. I'm not going to read the rest of the pasuk. How lovely are your feet in sandals, O daughter of nobles. And the Sfas Emes, he brings this, the Chiddushei Arim said it, but the Sfas Emes brings it out a lot, that it's such an important idea. Why are feet in sandals so lovely, right? The Shir HaShirim is talking about when people would go up to Har Bayit and they would take off their sandals, right? You would have to take off your sandals in order to go and, and bring a korban. And yet, he's saying, how lovely are your feet when they are in sandals. So what's he saying? He explains, the Chiddushei Arim explains that the whole idea of sandals is that the love needs to be contained in vessels. And the idea of sandals is that it gives like a tsura, right? A vessel for the loveliness of this, of the feet, of the service. He's saying, right, in a spiritual sense, right, that all of our love has to have vessels. It has to be contained in vessels. So, if I love someone to, what's the word, to smothering, right, then that's a destructive form of love. So it needs to be contained in sandals. That's how he's saying it, right? That in sandals, it looks like I'm making healthy meals for my, the people that I love. And I'm not, just saying yes to every single piece of junk food that they ask me for, which happens 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But, so if I said yes to everything that they wanted, everything that just tachlis, right? My children are all at home. They all want to, actually one just went back to yeshiva, Baruch Hashem. But that one wasn't the one Dafka that was asking for the treats. So, so they all want to watch all day, and they all want to play on devices all day, and they all want to eat junk food all day. Okay, that's lovely. So so chesed in the negative overflowing way would be me saying yes to every single thing that they ask for, right? And then at the end of the day, they feel disgusting, and they feel, like bad about themselves because their heads have been stuck in a device all day long. It's much harder. It's gevura to say no. And yet, it's a work in progress, obviously, but we have to say no, because saying no creates healthy boundaries. Saying no creates vessels to contain the chesed in a proper way. And he goes on and he says, Torah or, which we're going to do a couple of sentences of that in a few minutes, from Meharav, from the Alter Rebbe, on the Perush of Anochi Magen Lecha or Lach Ayen Sham. Okay, so we're gonna do that in a few minutes. But then he goes on to say, V'zeh she'amar lo Hakadosh Baruch Hu, ki me'ito haya zeh kedei she'yeh nishmar midato umitbarer shelo yuchal lizbol harisha'im ke'inyan shelo yuchal lizbol harisha'im. Right? Hashem is saying to him, this had to happen. You had to be in this war with the kings in order to refine your midah of chesed in a way that you should know that you can't tolerate Risha'im. Now, Avraham he continues to learn this lesson, because we know that Yishmael is the idea of chesed without boundaries. Yishmael is spoken about that he was a thief. So what is robbery? What is thieving? It's the whole idea of not respecting somebody else's boundaries, right? This is mine, and this is mine, and this is mine, and this is mine, right? A toddler also says that. Did you ever see that? The world according to a 2-year-old, right? If I see it, it's mine. If you have it, it's mine. If I want it, it's mine, right? All these things. So that's, that has no boundaries. And that's what Yishmael was. Now, we know, and he actually says in the piece on the Torah or, but we're not going to go into so much of that Avraham Avinu couldn't see the bad in Yishmael. He couldn't really see the bad in anyone. And so that had to come down into the world, but there also had to have a refinement of that. And so Hashem is saying to him, you had to see that these were Rishaim. You had to recognize, and you had to, do the battle in order to place boundaries around that idea of evil. And because you did that, your chesed is more refined. Because you did that, your chesed will be directed in a much more appropriate manner. And he says, he brings down the pasuk, and you've all heard this before. Right? The quote from the Midrash where it says that a person who is, when you're compassionate to the cruel, you end up being cruel to the compassionate, right? That misplaced chesed is ultimately ends up becoming something that brings more cruelty to the world rather than more chesed to the world. And we see that with child rearing as well. I mean, I'm bringing this example of my kids wanting to eat junk food and be on devices all day. So what kind of people will that create? It will create spoiled brats that, can't give of themselves. Please, Bezrat Hashem, let me have the strength to have Gevura. So that's the whole idea, that you create a situation where things are hafuch, where things are upside down. V'ha'inyan hu k'mo shekatuv yimincha Hashem nidara yimincha Hashem tiratz v'amru chazal, right? And that's this pasuk right here, source number 8 from Az Yashir, right? That Hashem had to drown the Mitzrim. Why did Hashem drown the Mitzrim? Because they needed to be drowned in order to get rid of that, their aspect that they were playing out in the world. But what's interesting about it is that it says your right hand shatters the foe, right? Right is always the midah of chesed, and left is always the midah of gevura. So when it says your right hand is what shatters the foe, that's what the Sfas Emes is bringing down here, meaning it says, V'amru Chazal, Kishabnei Yisrael zakain hasmol naaseh yamin. That the first of all, that the gevura should be done with the right hand means that it comes out in the correct way, right? It's gevura that's being done through chesed. It needs to come into the world. It's a gvul that needs to be brought into the world. It's a no that needs to happen, but it's a no that's not said with judgment. It's being said with the judgment of chesed. Okay, and he says, "V'zeh shekatuv anochi magen lach," and that's why it says, "I will be your shield." Shakadosh Baruch Hu shomer oto, that Hashem is watching him and guarding him. Ve'et midato lihiot alav magen, that his midah of chesed should be for him a shield. It should be a protection. It should be a positive thing. This midah of chesed shouldn't just get Avraham into trouble. It shouldn't enable, for all of us. It shouldn't be a midah that allows people to walk all over us. It shouldn't be that, every single time. It's very, very hard when people ask us, can you make a meal for someone? Can someone come to your house? I love having, seminary girls and yeshiva boys, but at some point there's also like the idea of, that I'm losing my mind. I don't have time for my own family. So I actually heard a beautiful story about Rebbetzin Heller, who had this issue, that there was a woman that needed a Pesach Seder, but she was a woman that was a very, very challenging person, very difficult to deal with. And the children of her family, her own children, Rebbetzin Heller's children, they had this woman over several times, and the children basically said, please don't have her again. It will ruin the Seder for us. It's too hard for us. And they were kids, so fine. But Rebbetzin Heller was like, well, but what am I supposed to do? Like, this is chesed, I have to do this chesed. And she spoke to a Rav, and the Rav said, it is, but your family, it has to be with the right balance. It has to be with, if it's just chesed that's going to also, that's coming in the wrong way, then it's hachzarim, hamarachem al hachzarim, right? Because she has to also take into account her own children and her own sanity. And each one of us also has to take into account our own sanity. We have to. Of course, we want to do chesed, but we also have to balance it out with, what we're actually able to give without getting sick or without, destroying the relationships with, with our own children. So what ended up happening was that she organized, I don't know if she paid for it, but she organized for this woman to go to a hotel for Pesach. Because she felt responsible that this woman should have a Pesach Seder, but she couldn't, on the Rav's advice, she couldn't bring her into her house because it was not going to be a healthy situation for her children. I heard from, I don't know if you ever go on the website, jewishmom.com. Chana Jenny Weisberg she's so great. And she talks about setting boundaries. And she says that we also have to think of our own families are actually a form of chesed. So it's almost easier sometimes to, cook a meal for the new family that just made Aliyah. And, we're going to have, noodles again, because that's, sometimes people are very drawn to doing things for the outside. And we always have to think about, that our own kids are like a chesed, There's a great story that I've told before. I'm just going to tell it again. My friend Nachami Vogel, her father is Manis Friedman, and she and Baruch Hashem, Kanai Nahara, the Friedmans have 14 children. They're not children anymore; they're all grown up. But many years ago, Rabbi Friedman shared this story that he and his wife went to speak in front of a crowd of people that they barely knew, who it was about some topic, and it was not a crowd that was familiar with their lifestyle as Chabad shluchim, and someone kind of in a very obnoxious way said, well, like, what does your wife do? And he was like, oh, she runs a home for 14 unwanted children, and the audience was like, oh, wow, that's amazing, And he was like, yeah, there are children, but we asked around and nobody else wants them. So, but there's such a grain of truth in that. There's such a jewel in there, because sometimes we overlook the people that are right around us, and we think that that's not chesed. It's only chesed if I do it for some, for a stranger, for someone, new in town. But it's also chesed when you do it for your husband. It's also chesed when you do it for your children. It's also chesed sometimes to do it for yourself. We all have to dig deep and be really honest with ourselves of, what the purpose is. Okay, I'm going to do one more little tiny thing here. It's little tiny, sorry, Alter Rebbe. But I'm going to kind of try and quickly go through it, because I cut out the first half. This is just the second half of this piece from Torah Or. But the Hine Noda, and it's well known, Ki Magen Nikra Davar HaMechaseh, that a magen, and he's taking the word magen means shield, right? So it's a thing that covers. Lemashal b'milchama, for example, in a war, nikra magen ma shemechaseh bo, right? We call the thing that you cover yourself to protect yourself a magen, a shield. Shelo yishlot alav hakeshet, that the arrows should not hit you. V'hine ktiv, and it says in Tehillim, ki shemesh magen Hashem Elokim, that Hashem is the sun and the shield. Shekmo she'ashemesh im lo haya lo nartik lo hayu yecholim lizbol oro hagadol. The same way that if the sun was not in a sheath, like we have many layers of cloud and environment and all kinds of things between us and the sun. So it's ki'ilu, like it's in a sheath. It's in a covering of some kind, a bag. Lo hayu, we would not be able to tolerate its great light. Ve'anartik hu hamagin shenuchal lizbol, and the nartik, the sheath, is what enables us, is the shield that enables us to be out in the sun and to have a positive interaction with it, and instead of getting burned, right? The hine noda shebechol boker, and it's known that every morning, the Avraham bechinas chesed, the morning is connected to Avraham. I'm just going to read one more little piece. Mitorer ba'olam vayashken Avraham baboker, right? The morning is associated with Avraham. We also associate Shacharis with Avraham, that Avraham instituted Shacharis, right? So the morning has the level of Avraham, which is the level of chesed. It's also when the sun, comes up, and it's sort of like is like the brightest kind of part of the day, not just the first thing in the morning, but the whole morning. The Kedi'ita b'Zohar HaKadosh, and it says in the Zohar HaKadosh, Kadosh Baruch Hu rotzeh lahanhig et haolam b'bechinas chesed. That Hashem really wants to operate the world at a level of chesed. But right, we know that chesed without barriers is problematic. Im lo haya magen lebechinas chesed hanizkar la'ayil letzamtzem chazdo v'tovo. But so therefore, if we didn't have this shield, right, the shield of, we're going to call it the shield of Avraham, right? That shield that makes the chesed the level that we can handle it, right? It constricts it, it contracts it, it puts it into sandals, let's say, okay? So we wouldn't, if we didn't have that magen, velatet derech tzimtzum kamo shetzarich rak lachayot haklipos, and Hashem, therefore, right, we talk about Hashem contracted himself, or contracts continuously his light in order to put it into, the things that are in this world, right? Everything has an aspect of Hashem's light in it, but it is very much contracted to the point where the thing itself can exist, okay? So we need that level in order for the world to exist, but we don't want the physical world to exist beyond that. We don't want the chesed to be overflowing. Why not? Mipnei shetzrichim bishvil sitra de kedusha shehiyeh isapcha Chashucha lenahora kiyadua, because we want to be able to take the physical reality that we're in and reveal the light in it. Okay, we want to turn that darkness into light. Now, he's talking here about the idea that if all we saw in the world was goodness, if all that we saw in the world was Hashem's light, then we would not put in any effort, because we would see that everything is ki'ilu done for us. The world is already elevated to the level of chesed, to the level of, everything that we need. And he spoke about at the beginning of the piece, this idea that if you don't recognize that there's bad in the world, the same way that, right, Avram Avinu had to recognize that there was bad in the world in order to, go and sort of fight against it and stop it. So if we don't recognize that there's bad in the world, then we don't try to stop it. We don't try to make the world a better place. If all we saw was goodness, right, that's the problem with overflowing chesed. If you only see, if your kid is smacking all the other kids and bullying and beating people up, and you're like, I was just reading Lahavdil, okay? Lahavdil Elef Havdalas, but I don't know if any of you are Harry Potter fans. I was reading Harry Potter #5 to my daughter earlier today. And, there's a character in it, Dudley, whose parents think that he can do no wrong. And he's a bully. He's terrible. He's a horrible person. And the parents are like, oh, you're so cute, Diddy Dudleykins, whatever they call him. But that's a blind spot, right? And if you have that blind spot, if you see everything that way, that everything's all good, then there's no motivation to try to make it better. There's no motivation to try to put it into sandals, to try to put it into vessels. There's no motivation to try to, shape it a certain way, to use it to grow and to reveal the light in something, because you think that it's already light. V'lachen, Ve'im lo haya derech tzimtzum haya chiyutam bli gvul v'lo hayu yicholim leva'er hara min haaretz, right? And this is what he says. If we didn't have this contraction or constriction, or this boundaries being put into place, then everything would live with no boundaries, no barriers, and we would never be able to get rid of the badness, because we wouldn't see it as badness. ולכן בכל בוקר כשמתעורר מידת אברהם, מידת חסד, כנזכר לעיל, so therefore every morning that begins a new day with this midah of Avraham, of chesed, אנו צריכים לברך ברכת מגן אברהם. We have to make this bracha of Magen Avraham, that this shield of Avraham should be activated in us and in the world. Magin sheyaseh magin libchinas Avraham hanizkar la'ayil letovatenu, because it's a shield that enables this aspect of Avraham, this bechina of Avraham, this aspect of loving kindness and chesed. The boundaries that we put around it is what enables it to function in a healthy way in this world. And so every morning when we make that bracha, or mincha, mariv, right? When we make that bracha, but specifically in the morning, because in the morning that's where that aspect of chesed is strongest, right? It's also like we wake up, we have energy, we're going to do so much good for the world, right? Okay, that's great. But Magen Avraham, okay? Do it in a healthy way. Do it with boundaries. Do it in a way that is going to bring out the best and not just smooth over the bad, okay? Don't just say like, oh, I'm Avraham, everything's great, my house is a mess. Oh, that's so awesome. My kids are spoiled. Oh, that's so wonderful, right? We can't do that. That's not having vessels for growth, right? That's denial. That's not the proper healthy way to grow through chesed. The proper healthy way to grow through chesed is to say, Magen Avraham, help me, Avraham Avinu, help me, Hashem, to have the aspect of Magen Avraham, of chesed, through the shield of boundaries. chesed through the direction of boundaries. And I have just this last quote from Brené Brown, who I love. Daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves, even when we risk disappointing others. This is, she's all about courage, right? So sometimes we think, if I don't say yes to everything that's asked of me, then, people aren't going to like me, or I'm not going to, maintain my status as, this kind person. And we see exactly what the Sfas Emes is saying. That's exactly what the Sfas Emes is saying up here, that Avram was worried about that. I'm not going to be known as this, chesed tzaddik anymore. And Hashem says, no. Now you're davka going to be known as a chesed tzaddik, because this is actual chesed. This is how you refine that overflowing all over the place chesed into a way that's actually usable, into a way that's actually manageable, into when we set, boundaries for ourselves, for our children, if we're still raising, small children, but that enables the kindness to come to us in a healthy way, and it enables us to show kindness to others in a healthy way, because it's in a vessel of appropriateness. So I'll give us all a bracha that we should have the courage to love ourselves, even when we risk disappointing others. That we should know that that gevura that comes through chesed, and chesed really that comes through this shaping the boundaries of gevura, that it's enabling the people that we're giving it to drink. Okay, like if you have a baby that you want to feed something to, water, let's say, right? And you dump a bucket of water on the baby, so that doesn't do anybody any good. But when you put it in a bottle and it comes out little tiny drop by little tiny drop, so then it actually nourishes the baby in the appropriate way. So we have to reframe our mindset when it comes to giving chesed, that it needs to come out of us in the right amount, with the right boundaries, because when it comes out of us that way, it can go into the person that we're giving it to the right way. Have a beautiful week. May we all continue to connect to the Avos and the Imaos. May we learn so much from them about ourselves, about the world, about each other, so that we can truly grow in the DNA that they've given us, and become the people that Hashem put us here to be. Lots of love, everybody. Shavua tov.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Besimcha rabba. So nice
Thank
to see
you
all
so
of
much,
you.
Anna.
You're
Thank you so
welcome.
much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy I got to join this time.
Yay. Me too.
Um,
Bye.